implemented. So when it comes to budget implementation, especially in the education sector, what we've seen over the years is that sometimes you get, so there is the proposed amount and there is the released amount. So most of the time, what we realize is that released funds at the end of the day is usually around 40%, 50% at most.
Annually, budgets are presented at various levels of government and with respect to the plans for the fiscal year. Our concern here is on the education sector, where we'll be discussing the fiscal responsibility and accountability within the education sector, within the Nigerian paradigm. And to discuss that with me here is Mr. Oriyomi Ogunwale, who is the Chief Executive of Eduplana. Good morning.
Final thing. Yeah, good morning.
Why should anyone care about the budget?
The budget is a policy. It's a policy document that shows government spending. It shows how the government prioritizes societal needs. And so we all need to care about the budget itself that the government is working on, because it shows what government wants to do in terms of spending in the society. So if we care about our own needs as society, as citizens, we also need to know, or we also need to care about what the government is trying to do with the budget, for example, because that's what will show what their priorities are. If, for example, we need to care about the government is actually prioritizing insecurity in the budget, that's what will show if government actually prioritizes our needs. So we as citizens need to care very, very much about the budget.
Moving to the education budget. So what constitutes the education budget of a country or a state? With specific reference to Nigeria.
Okay. So for education, for example, what we'll look at is over the years, let's say for like last year, for example, COVID-19 happened. When COVID-19 happened, the priority became that for kids to be at home for like 7 months, we need to build a technology platform that actually bridges the gap in case there's another pandemic. So for a society like Nigeria, for example, we're supposed to look at what the government is prioritizing in the education budget and look at if the government is actually prioritizing an education technology platform in case there's an emergency like COVID-19 again. And that is how we look at if the government is actually prioritizing the societal needs. Now, for the education budget, for example, the way the budget works is that there's a revenue part, there's the expenditure part, and we can also look at deficit, which is actually how the government is going to fund the budget itself, because we must understand that the budget does not fund itself. There's a way the government is going to make money. That money that they are making is what will then determine how they are going to spend it. So, but for the education budget, for example, it does not contain anything like that. What the education budget contains is the consolidated receipts, that is in terms of recurrent expenditure and capital spending. Under recurrent expenditure, you have personnel, which is on salaries on different contracts. They also have overhead, which is used to maintain the different agencies which are statutory on the normal basis. So you also have the capital spending section, which actually highlights some of the capital projects that the government is going to embark on a particular year, for example.
So some section of society assume that it's only the federal government that spends on education. Is that actually the case?
For education, for example, in developed countries, in other countries, what you see is that the government, the federal government itself, that's the overall government, however way their government is structured, what they do is that they are in charge of management, administration of the education sector itself. You have countries that have the Ministry of Higher Education. You have countries that have Ministry of Education and Employment. However way they want to structure it. But for Nigeria, for example, we have the Federal Ministry of Education, which is in charge of administration, which is in charge of management of education in Nigeria. You also have UBE, which is Universal Basic Education Commission. You have TET Fund, you have NUC. For higher education, you can talk about the National University Commission. You can talk about the federal government has created to be in charge of higher education in Nigeria. But when you go to basic education, what you discover is that this is the responsibility of the state government and the local government, so that they are closer to the communities, they are closer to the grassroots, so they understand these needs more and can address them quickly. So you look at basic education generally, the state governments are actually in charge of their administration. And the interesting thing about it is the state government gets to allocate funds to basic education on a yearly basis. And what we've discovered, especially for us in monitoring education fund in Nigeria, is that you can look at a state like Lagos State. They can allocate like say 108 billion to the education sector itself. But where it gets interesting is that 108 billion is not even up to what some state governments are allocating as their overall budget for the year. So that is where it gets interesting, and that's where there are this disparity in education spending in Nigeria, for example. And that has continued to pose a challenge to the education sector itself.
How much of the budget is implemented based on your professional experience over the years?
The budget in Nigeria, there's so much fanfare around it. When the budget was presented, I think it was last month. When it was presented, for example, there's so much fanfare about what the federal government wants to do, what they intend, how much was allocated to the education sector itself, and how the federal government has done very well this time around at 7.9%, proposing to spend 1.29 trillion. However, what we understand from budgeting in Nigeria is that it's a proposal, it's a proposed document. Like in 2020, for example, when COVID-19 struck, that means revenue was not coming in again. And what that actually means is that most of the spending that has been allocated, that has been proposed in the budget, because revenue was not coming in, definitely those amounts cannot be realized anymore, and those projects cannot be implemented. So when it comes to budget implementation, especially in the education sector, what we've seen over the years is that sometimes you get, so there is the proposed amount and there is the released amount. So most of the time, what we realize is that amount released funds at the end of the day is usually around 40%, 50% at most. So if the federal government is saying, for example, that they want to allocate 50 billion to the education sector, what we've discovered is that the amount released around, say, 20 billion, all the gains, all the proposals in the budget, for example, will not be realized. So when it comes to budget implementation in Nigeria, it's still at a very, very poor level. Budget implementation is still very, very poor, or let's say at best, average at the moment.
So how can we better monitor this implementation of the budget?
Well, there's this discussion that has continued to continue in the society. And when you look at budget implementation, we must first of all agree, I think, and I highlighted it earlier, about the challenges in raising funds, even to in raising funds to fund the budget itself. However, what I think we can structure our argument, because we are not the budget office now, we are not in charge of maybe IGR or tax or revenue to now say how do we fund the budget. However, what we can look at is amounts allocated to the education sector, amount released, fund released to the education sector. How are we ensuring that we are getting value for money? There is accountability for these funds. And I think that's where the discussion should be structured around. And to actually do that, I think for there to be a budget, first of all, there's usually around July, August, there is what we call town hall meetings, whereby people, representatives, House of Rep members they are supposed to organize a town hall meeting whereby they can gather citizens to say what are their needs, so that these needs are what they collate together and they then take to the National Assembly and look at, okay, these are the ones who can implement, these are the ones who cannot implement. And there's a lobbying process around that stage. So that is what you see in the final budget proposal. But what then happens after that is that after the town hall meeting, what can be done by citizens is to then monitor those representatives, monitor if they are going to include these projects in the budget itself. Now, when the projects are included in the budget, in the final budget, what citizens also need to do is that they need to then ensure that they get details of this project. They get details in terms of location, in terms of the type, in terms of the amount, so that when they get these details and they can get the project code, the zip code, for example, the zonal intervention project code, for example, what then happens is that they can monitor this project to the full, so that a 50 billion naira project is not implemented like a 10 billion naira project. So when it comes to education, for example, because what we've discovered on the field is that when we monitor projects, we discover that they're usually substandard. They are not implemented to the full, and most of the time is because citizens don't have the final details of this project. So that is what we like to encourage citizens to do. They should monitor their representatives, they should attend town hall meetings, monitor their representatives, get details of this project, and also monitor the contractors on the field to ensure that they can get value for money on the long run.
So where can citizens have access to data on the budget?
For citizens to have access to the budget, they can visit the budget office website, which I think is budgetoffice.gov.ng. However, they can also write letters to their Ministry of Budget or maybe the Ministry of Finance, I don't know what it is at this time in different states, and request for details of the budget that can be printed for them, or they might have to pay for it. So those are citizens' role or responsibilities to demand, because this time around it's not something the government, especially in this part of the world, releases easily. You have situations where you want to request for budget, for example, and what you get is line items. It just give you education, so amount. They don't give you the details. They don't give you the details in terms of recurrent. They don't give you the details of the capital project that will be implemented for that particular year. So citizens must know how to demand from these things from the government. However, it should be easy. It should something, especially in this tech age, it should be available on your website so that you can download easily and actually scrutinize this project. Especially, it's not about scrutiny, it's just about trying to get the details of the project that are allocated to areas that concerns you, whether it is education or whether it is your local government, for example. So these are things that should be a norm. but it's something that becomes a dogfight in Nigeria, for example. And what you also get sometimes is that you see a situation where you are requesting for the budget and it is done in a photocopied version. So they photocopy it. Sorry, they scan it. It's done in a scanned version. What happens with the scanned version is that you cannot analyze it. You cannot get details out of it unless you now have to type it all over. Imagine having to type a document of 1,500 pages. So that is some of those ways that government agencies try to beat accountability and are not transparent enough. So these are some of the things that citizens need to do. They need to demand. They can use FY request letter. They can visit their website and continue to engage them so that they can have access to the budget itself.
By the way, FY means freedom of information. So
yeah, freedom of info. The FY letter is freedom of information. It's something you can use to demand documents from government agencies.
And everyone is eligible to write it. Has the right to write it, because the right to information is one of the rights that we have as citizens. So let's come to
yes.
So Mr. Ogunwale, let's come to what Eduplana does. What are you up to at Eduplana?
At Eduplana, we have a mission to increase access to quality education for every citizen, whether it's a child, whether it's youth, we want to launch a strategy plan next year, a 3-year strategy plan that will focus on public schools in Nigeria. We want to see how we can improve the state of public schools infrastructure, funding, and service delivery. So we are working on it presently. By next year, it should be ready, and maybe we can launch by Q1 of 2022. And what we want to do is to see in the next 3 years how we can ensure the renovation of 5,000 public schools in Nigeria. So what we do is to sensitize citizens, to ensure we demand accountability in the education sector, to advocate for improved service delivery also in the education sector. But also we have the mission also to increase access to the education action plan. They call it the education MSP, the Education Ministerial Strategic Plan, so that citizens can have access to this document and also demand that government implement a plan and achieve a target even for the education sector. So those are some of the things that we do at Eduplana, and we try to use media advocacy, visitation to government officials. We also use tech to ensure that we achieve our mission on the long run.
All right. Talking about tech, what's your website? Or where can people have access to you more?
Okay, so to have access to us on our website is the name Eduplana, www.eduplana.com, and you can check across social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Eduplana_. At Eduplana_. That's our name across the social media handles.
It's been a fruitful discussion on education budgeting and accountability, and we've been on with Mr. Oriyomi Ogunwale. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, we hope to have you some other time. Bye for now.
Oh, no problem. Always happy to be part of this. Thank you.